Welcome to the MAM journals. I hope that you had a great Christmas. I like this time of the year, in between Christmas and the New Year. I always think it's a great time to reflect. And I'm going to take that opportunity to reflect on the MAM journals in 2022. And in today's video, I'm going to be covering a few things. Firstly, I'd like to cover the bikes that we've reviewed and mine and your views on them. Secondly, I would like to talk about motorsport season. I've followed bike racing since the 1980s when I've been actively going to races, and I think it's interesting to catch up on that. Thirdly, I'd like to talk about a bit of fun I had this year because I had a return to track riding, which I hadn't done for over a decade. So that was good fun, and I hope to share that with you. We've also done, during the course of this year, towards the latter end, we visited a number of shows and auctions, and I'd like to talk about our experiences there. And finally, I'm going to be talking about our plans for 2023. As always, I hope that you enjoy the video. 2022 was actually coming up to the second year of the channel, and I've been absolutely amazed. It's had 500,000 views, which is about 499,000 more than I thought we'd get. So thank you very much for watching it. This year we've made 29 videos, 20 of which are of bikes. We've actually covered 5 Royal Enfields, in our +1 summary on the big bore Royal Enfield that I did. We've covered 4 BMWs, 4 Suzukis, 2 Hondas, that was an SP12 and a much older 404, and we've covered a Kawasaki comparison between the ZRX 1200 and the 1100. We've also covered 1 MASH, which a bike I liked, but sadly, I'm reading reviews, it seems to be struggling from a bit of mechanical reliability, which is a shame because it's a stunning looking bike. We covered 1 Ducati, which I bought this year, and we've also recently done the BSA Gold Star. I've actually enjoyed making all of them, but it's interesting enough when looking at the viewing numbers, some of you have enjoyed some of them more than others. And often the ones that you like aren't necessarily the ones that I've enjoyed making. But that's actually perfectly normal, I guess. And I shall continue, if you'll excuse me, to make the ones I want and hope that you like them going forward. I particularly enjoyed making the video on the SP1, SP2 because I had the privilege of having some help from a guy called Roger Ditchfield, who was actually involved in the development of the race bikes, one of 4 companies that were selected across the world when they were first developing the SP1s and 2s. And so I thought that gave a particularly additional insight that many other videos didn't manage to capture. So my thanks to Roger, if he's watching, for helping me make that particular video. The ones that you've liked are in the main ones that I've liked, and I thought it might be a bit of fun if we did the top 3 videos since the channel has been created and the ones that you appear to enjoy the most. The third most popular video was a Royal Enfield. I actually thought it might be this bike, the big bore, that I did a series of videos on showing the development as we put it to an 865. But actually the one that attracted the most viewings was the 350 Classic. Now, I enjoy riding them. They're a nice little bike. They're possibly a bit underpowered for some, in that realistically it's a bike that can only do sort of 55 to 65 miles an hour. It will do more than that, but probably down a mine shaft on a good day. And whilst I joke, I do recognise that the riders that are attracted to that are looking for a different level of progress and travel and enjoy their motorcycling in different ways. But I enjoyed riding the bike, and I enjoyed making the video. Clearly, some of you did too. The second most popular video on the channel is actually the one that I made on the Z900 RS, and I can understand why. We are completely aligned in that. This is one of my favourite bikes. Any of you who've watched the channel for long know that I'm slightly better at buying bikes than I am at selling them, but I have actually managed to sell this bike, and the new owner is going to pick it up later on in January, but certainly don't take that as any comment on the bike that I don't like it. I absolutely love these Z900 RSs, so much so that I've ordered a new SE which arrives in the early weeks of January. Number one, the video that you liked the most in 2022 were the videos that I made on the Suzuki GT1000. And we are completely aligned in that, because not only did you like the videos the most, this is my 2022 bike of the year. I am occasionally accused of being slightly too positive about bikes, but to be honest, I just call them as I see them, and I am genuinely enthusiastic about that. Some people say that I should be a bit more negative about bikes, and just to make one or two of those people happy, is this bike perfect? No, of course it's not. It's got what's called a MySpin application, which is supposed to give you navigation. It's somewhere between not very good and useless. It had Dunlop tyres on it, which combined with the Nitron suspension that I put on, were frankly terrifying in the wet, and had to get thrown in the bin as quick as I possibly could. But as a bike for two-up touring, my wife and I, an exhilarating and comfortable ride. It has been a fabulous bike. I've done 4,000 miles on this bike, which of the 15,000 that I've covered so far this year, the fact that I've done 4,000 on this tells you how much I actually like and enjoy it. My initial passion for motorcycles was born in 1973 when I saw a Z1 parked on the town square, and it wasn't very long afterwards when I began to take an interest in motorcycle racing. And I actually went to, I think the first race I went to see was a series called the Transatlantic Challenge, and I remember watching a very young Freddie Spencer hurtling around on a straight barred superbike of the time. It inspired my lifelong passion for motorcycle racing, and nowadays with technology, of course, you can see every round in great detail. I've enjoyed MotoGP this year. I think our expectations were that Ducati would vanish off into the distance. They had that many bikes entered on the grid, but it was a more interesting series than I thought it would be, simply because the Works Ducati frankly wasn't yet ready. And indeed, when Ducati did win early races, they did it on the previous year's bike, but it meant that Yamaha gave them a very good run for their money, with Quartararo, who's a brilliant rider, actually winning and going in at half time in front. But at the beginning of the year, my money was on Bagnaia, and it proved to be the case, as the Ducatis, after the second half and sorting out their bike, managed to gradually pull away. Exciting series, and I really enjoyed it. I think the coverage on the motorbike racing is fantastic now. I'm looking forward to the series starts. I know that the MotoGP series starts in Portugal at the end of March, and I booked the ferry. And we're going down on the GT to enjoy it. One of the other motorsport series that I follow are World Superbikes, and indeed these three bikes here are what's known as homologation bikes, i.e. bikes on which were available in the showrooms and they based their World Superbike efforts on. I really enjoyed World Superbikes this year, and it was really a three-way battle between Bautista, Toprak and Ray. And fantastic racing, very close. They were distinct from the others. I took the opportunity to go up to Donington. I took actually this bike, the SP1, up, and to watch it from the Redgate corner. And I was certainly impressed by having ridden there a couple of weeks before on a track day, to watch those guys go around relentlessly for that number of laps. I mean, these guys are, as well as being top rated motorcycle racers, they are athletes. They are fit as a butcher's dog, as we used to say. British Superbikes was, of course, dominated by the Yamahas, and not the one we thought it was going to be. I thought Mackenzie might come and do it again, but sadly he was struck by injury, a couple of injuries, and never really got going in his flow. But a remarkable performance by a young rider called Bradley Ray. Both Mackenzie and Ray are going off into World Series next year, but it'll be interesting to see who emerges in British Superbikes in the 2023 season. 2022 was the year when I decided to have a return back to track riding. I had done a few days during my working life, but never really had the time to sort of concentrate on it or settle down into it, because there's always something squeezed in between something else. What motivated me to do it? Well, first thing, I certainly got no delusions that I'm going to be some great motorcycle racer, and my aspirations are fairly low in terms of what I want to do with track days. I'm very happy riding around in the novice group, and although I'd obviously like to be towards the upper end of it, as is the nature, but what I decided to do was I wanted to improve my speed and get more comfortable with the modern handling and modern tyre technology pressing on, and nowadays it's quite tricky to actually sort of really start exploiting a bike on the road for a number of reasons, and none of which probably need to be explained. So how I decided to do it was, I thought rather than take my own bikes, which is logistically quite a challenge in terms of van, fueling, transportation and various other things that are sorted out, I thought I'd just get and hire a bike. And I went with the Yamaha Experience and I had a great time. I went to 5 circuits and started off at Cadwell Park. I never knew they raced on pavements. I mean, it's such a narrow circuit. And I thought, well, okay, this is okay. I enjoyed it. And then I went again. So I went twice to Donington, once to Brands Hatch in the wet, which was an interesting experience because, again, it gave me an opportunity to try modern tyres in wet conditions at a more pacey experience than you're probably going to get the opportunity to do on the road, and I was really impressed by it. And then I finished the season for me with a day at Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit. Such a fantastic experience to be riding around the same circuit that your motorcycling heroes race on during the course of the year. So I did actually make a video on it. It's probably the least viewed videos of any of the ones that I've made. And what that video is all about is about encouraging people like me who've got no aspirations to be a track day god, but simply want to enjoy their bike and have an experience riding around, exploring their own limits, knowing that there's no internet delivery vans about to pull out on you and that everyone's heading in roughly the same direction. And I had great fun with it, and I would recommend it if it's on your bucket list for 2023 to go off and tick the list and say I've had a go on the track. Then have a look at the video. It shows you how to do it, shows it straightforward. It's not an intimidating experience, and if you're riding around as I do in the novice group, then you'll find that it's like-minded people and everybody gives everybody enough space, knowing that we're not kidding ourselves about our ability. But what a great bit of fun that I had, and I plan to do more of it in 2023. I might actually do one session where you can go and get some tuition as to where my reactions and my body weight slightly heavier than it was when I was a young man, and learning how to adjust your weight in the right positions might be a day well spent, just to not to increase speed significantly, but just to increase my enjoyment of exploring the capabilities of a modern bike. I did it on the R7 and the R6, which was enjoyable. If I ever get round to the stage and change my system where I actually start taking my own bikes, this is the bike I take. People say to me, why don't you take the Ducati? Well, I don't take the Ducati because, one, it's worth a fortune. Secondly, I wouldn't get any parts if I did chuck it into the undergrowth. And thirdly, I'm not sure that I can do a 996R justice. While I think something like this, a 600 or a 750, is perfect for it. And if you did have the misfortune to sort of drop it, hopefully you'll probably be all right physically, because most people are, but I wouldn't be too heartbroken. So I think if I do go, I'll say this is the one I'll take. The 750 is, in my view, one of the best motorbikes of all time. There you go, I've got off the fence. The bike behind me is actually one of the 3 bikes that are new to me this year, although I've ordered a few more, but they're not yet here, so they don't count. But actually this bike was probably the nearest I've come to vanishing off into the undergrowth this year, and after a track day at Donington on the R6, the next day I decided to take this out, and of course I forgot that this hasn't got ABS, it hasn't got traction control, and it's got a lot more torque than an R6, so I managed to mono-wheel my way around a corner and avoid hurtling into the ditch. But a lesson learnt. Technology is very different on the bikes that I've got, and you have to ride them according to the technology, and trying to do things that you can do on modern bikes is not quite the same as what you can do on the older bikes. You need to concentrate on what you're doing. But all ended well, and I love this bike. This is enormous fun and fantastic power and traction. Other things that we've done this year, and I said that I touched on, later on in the year we decided to try and experiment going away from the controlled environment that I'm in now, where we've got control of lighting, background noise and location. We thought we'd try and go and see how we got on filming at shows and auctions. And of course, outside broadcasts, as we'll grandly call them, are a completely different kettle of fish. They're much harder to film in because you've got no control over light, you've got very little control over the acoustics going on in the room, and there is more than you there. So there's lots of people weaving in and out, and that has its own sort of thrills really to it, because you get 2 or 3 minutes to set yourself up and to take a piece to camera, so you've got no time to plan it. I did try and plan the shows so that I have some idea about what I was going to talk about, but invariably, as I'm a passionate motorcyclist, so I tend to react to passion as opposed to logic, and I'd go there, look at the bike that I thought I'd talk about, not feel the love, and simply move on and find a bike that I did feel passionate about. So we had great fun, very spontaneous, and you do have to fire from the hip, but we enjoyed making them, and judging by the viewing figures, you enjoyed watching them. It's a great way of seeing bikes that you hadn't even thought about for 20 or 30 years there in front of you, and it triggers memories which some of which definitely made me laugh, and reminiscing of a well-spent youth. So as my period of reflection on 2022 draws to a close, my thoughts naturally form to, well, what does next year hold? And we are planning to continue with the channel and planning to develop it further. I think we're learning over the time that we really want to make 2 sorts of videos. We want to make what I call bikementaries, which will continue trying to enhance our quality of filming and the preparation that goes into them, see if we can really take that up another level. We're pleased with what we've done so far, but I think there's always opportunity to improve, and indeed one of the things that motivates me to do these is the opportunity to employ new technology, learn new techniques, and acquire new skills as we go. We're certainly going to be using some GoPro this year. I've not really got on with GoPro. I've only used it once in all of the videos that I've made, and that's because I wasn't very pleased with the outcome. And watching some of the other YouTubers who've used GoPro, sometimes I find that a combination of fairly sedate riding, which you need to do when you're obviously recording on a public video, and bad acoustics. I suspect, like many of us of my generation, acoustically challenged, and I don't like background noise and people speaking over bike noises and with mumbled speech. But watching a few, and I always think the Missenden Fly does a really good job, where he does GoPro but really clear acoustics, and I think which is clearly demonstrated to me, it is possible and it can be done, and therefore we'll be trying to improve that. Santa very kindly delivered a GoPro to me this year, so I'm looking forward to seeing if between us we can get the hang of that. Stuart's keen this year that we do some more drone work, and I agree with him. All I've got to do is prevent him crashing it into trees, which can prove an expensive process, but I think it adds something to it, and again, it's all a bit of fun. On the channel itself, we're going to, as I say, do the documentaries, but we're also going to do a bit more light-hearted, what I call muses, i.e. where it's not specifically about the details of a bike, just really a motorcycle adventure. And I've got a few plans as to what we can do. Certainly want to do a tour of the Cotswolds on my Royal Enfield Big Bore, and 1 or 2 other things that we've got in mind, which I think might make amusing, light-hearted stories that are related to motorcycling. So how I'd like to conclude this is really to thank you very much for subscribing and watching the channel. I really do appreciate it, and to wish you all a very happy, healthy and prosperous 2023. As always, ride safe, stay well.